Albert Einstein, Stephen Hawking, Steve Jobs, and Elon Musk. These are some of the most incredible geniuses of our time. They have advanced our education in science, technology, and so much more, and continue to leave long-lasting impacts on society. However, were you aware that most geniuses struggled in school, and some scored poorly in school settings, some even being reprimanded for how they thought? Do you think if they conformed to the educational standards and denied their innate ability to use creative thinking to solve problems that they would have become as successful as they are today? Our education system did not only fail these brilliant geniuses, but millions of children. The way the current system works prohibits creativity and imagination that makes education fun. It only aims for passing state exams, which is not what education should be focused on. It should promote critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills, decision-making, and so on and so forth. There's so much at stake here. This is the future of our world. If we are to succeed and continue thriving in the world, we need creative thinkers, people able to see beyond what we currently have, people who can problem solve and make these difficult decisions. Creativity is a vital element in K-12 education, which the current education seems to be more so devoted on standardized testing and curriculums than focusing on the creative thinking. I'll discuss why the system is like this and some of the solutions we can do to change this corrupted system that has impacted children all over the world. First of all, let's discuss the modern education system. The current education system is focused around standardized testing and benchmarks, as stated earlier. Many of these tests often being decisions for children's future. This current system that forces children to pass standardized testing is forcing children to undergo incredible stress. Testing is an important tool to assess children's progress. However, this should not be the only tool used to assess children, or at least not held at such a high standard as they currently are today. This also teaches children to only think a certain way, as all these tests are presented the same way. And it begins to taking creativity and imagination away from their children, creating a boring and unsupportive environment for those who think differently. Leading into my next point. It does not accommodate for children who process information differently. A good example of this is math. There are many methods in order to solve a problem. Not one of these methods or equations are considered wrong. However, some of them can be more complicated or intense than others, but that does not make it wrong. However, there are many teachers who only want their questions answered with a certain equation or method, and this is hugely motivated by these testing requirements, as this is the equation they want to see children using on these exams. However, this excludes so many children who may find it easier to do it another way. This leads to boring and much more difficult coursework than if they would just allow the children to think freely. Every person has the right to think their own way. This is what sparks differences and helps children engage in learning. Next up to discuss is why the education systems are so heavily based upon these standardized testing. Aaron Churchill, who's the director of the Fordham Institute, states that the reasons for standardized testing is for objectivity, comparability, and accountability. In other words, assessing what the child knows, comparing the child to other children of their age, and ensuring that teachers are doing their job. It seems like good motive for such testing. However, why are these tests held to such high stakes for the children? Why put them under so much stress when all these reasons seem to be focused on quantitative data and comparability? Additionally, Robin Harwick, who has a PhD in secondary education, states, the narrowing of the curriculum for the benefit of high scores on standardized tests doesn't promote the development of cognitive abilities. Additionally, it stifles teachers. The reason these standardized tests are in place are not for the benefit of the children. They are for data and comparing them. This takes away from the fun from education, as children just become a number in the system, and it does more harm than good, as they are not developing these detrimental cognitive abilities, as Harwick states. Finally, let's discuss some of the consequences and some of the solutions we can come up with to fix the education system for generations to come. We can clearly see the consequences in this study done by George Land and NASA, which was conducted to discover and recruit geniuses by using the definition of creative thinkers. As you can see here on this graph, at age 5, they were tested, and 98% of these students scored 98% creative thinking. They were then tested again at the age of 10, where only 30% had remained creative thinkers. They were then tested again at 15. Only 12% had kept their scores of creative thinking. And finally, at 25 and older, only 2% of the populations of the children that were tested had retained their creative thinking behavior. Land stated, "What we have concluded is that non-creative behavior is learned. This study proves that the current education system we have is teaching kids to adopt non-creative behavior. So what are some of the alternatives to shift standardized testing towards a more supportive and creative learning environment?" According to the Noah Webster Educational Foundation on March 30th, 2022, schools can implement these 4 ideas to help shift away from standardized testing while also improving creative thinking and analyzing the data the tests provide. Portfolio-based assessments. This is a collection of the students' work, and then at the end of the year, the students are required to reflect what they have covered or mastered. Stealth assessments. These are tests that are hidden into the curriculum to see how children are performing without the stress of thinking they are testing. Sample testing. Taking a proportion of students and giving them a test and using that as a ratio to the school to determine progress. It reduces the amount of testing given and they're not so heavily reliant upon them. And finally, school evaluations or inspections, which are already implemented today, but is aimed so that teachers are evaluated to make sure that they are still teaching correctly and not missing any vital information. In conclusion, by embracing creativity in education, we allow students to find their true potential, empowering them not just to navigate the challenges of today, but to shape the innovations of tomorrow.